Let's open that churn data and take a look at it. What we're going to find is that this is a data set with a lot of different variables, and spending some time getting familiar with them is probably a good idea. So let's look at our output data real quick. So what do we got? Well, first off, I'm going to skip all the way over to the right to see our output variable, or sorry, our variable that we're trying to predict, churn. So this usually has the value 0, sometimes the value 1. 1 means that our customer churned or left our service. 0 is they stayed with us. So now we've got a bunch of different variables. Let's look at them real quick. We've got account length, how long our customers had an account with us in months. We've got the area code. There's 3 different area codes here. They're all San Francisco area codes, so presumably this data came from the San Francisco area. This is a pretty old data set, so if you're only familiar with cell phones over the last, 10 years or so, some of these things are going to feel a little bit weird to you. But this is sort of how historically a lot of cell phone plans worked. So we've got various options that we could buy with our cell phone service here. So the first one is an international plan. This is something that we would pay each month to give us discounted rates on calling internationally. We have a voicemail plan dummy variable, which seems especially weird now. We used to have to pay for extra services like voicemail. And so 1 indicates that this customer was paying for voicemail, 0 indicates they weren't. Then over here for voicemail messages, this is the number of voicemail messages those people got per month. You'll see that it's 0 for the people who didn't have a voicemail plan. Another feature that used to be common in cell phone service was that you would pay by the minute that you used, but these rates would change depending on when in the day you were using your phone. So here we've got day minutes. This is like during, from like, say 8 in the morning till 5 or 6 at night, the number of minutes that we used, the number of calls that we made, and our total charge for those minutes. Then we've got the same for evening and night. And we've also got the same for international. This is a group of people who are making, at least some international calls here. We also have the total minutes, total calls, total charge. So this is our total cell phone bill at the end of the month. And then finally, we've got the number of calls that we made to customer service. So now thinking about these, perhaps you have some ideas of which of them might be useful to try to predict whether our customer is going to churn or not. Now, it's not, for a lot of them, it's not immediately obvious. If they've had an account for longer, does that make them more or less likely to leave our service? My guess would be the longer they've been with us, the less they're likely to, less chance there is that they'll leave, but I'm not 100% sure. For things like whether they have an international plan or a voicemail plan, I really have no idea going into this. I would suspect, though, that the higher our bill is, like maybe this total charge column, the higher that is, the more likely we would be to churn, because seeing a high bill might freak us out and make us think about changing our cell phone carrier. And this last one, customer service calls, maybe that's a good one to look at. If somebody's making a lot of calls to customer service, they're probably upset with something that's happening with their cell phone, and so maybe that's a good indicator they're likely to leave. Okay, so now that we've had a look at the data, a look at the variables, now let's have a look at the data more closely. So if we, under tasks and utilities, go to the statistics tab, we're going to have a look at this a couple of different ways. So first off, table analysis. Use our did I call it church? Did I call the data church? That's very strange. I did. I called it church. Strange. Okay, so what are we going to do here? We want to select some row variables and column variables. For row variable, choose that churn variable. And column variables, we're going to choose our categorical variables. So that is area code, international plan, voicemail plan. And we can hit run on that and take a look at the output. For me, my favorite part of this output is this table, this graph here, which shows for each of the categories what fraction of people churned, the blue box, and what fraction of people didn't churn, the red box. So looking at this, I'm not real surprised at this output. Notice that the ratio of churn to not churn is basically the same for each of these area codes. This suggests to us that area code probably doesn't matter. That the people from the various area codes were equally likely to leave our service. But if we have a look down at our next one, international plan, now we've got a big difference in the ratios here. We've got most people don't have an international plan, that's the width of this box, but the height tells us how many people are churning, what fraction of these people are churning. And this is saying that the people who don't have an international plan, relatively few of them are churning. For the people who do have an international plan, lots of them are churning, almost half of them, which looks ridiculously high. But that suggests that international plan is going to be a good variable for us to use to try to predict people who are going to churn. Next one down, we've got voicemail plan, and again we see a difference here. The people who don't have a voicemail plan are more likely to leave than the people who do have a voicemail plan. Now maybe you're starting to strategize here. If you were running this company and you wanted people to not leave, well, we've got something that we could potentially give them. We could potentially give them this voicemail plan, and maybe that would make them less likely to leave. Okay, now let's think about our continuous variables. Again, the church dataset. I'll probably change the name of that between this and the next variable, just so I don't get confused again. And now we're going to select some analysis variables here. We're going to choose everything that we haven't chosen up till now. So that was account length and everything from day minutes through customer service calls. And then as a classification variable, select our churn. Now we're going to go under the options tab, and under plots, select comparative box plot. And just to make our life slightly easier, let's add some statistics on top of those box plots, just so that we can see the averages a little bit more easily. It makes the graphs a little ugly, but it will be useful for us in just looking at this data. Okay, so now this has presented us with summary statistics for the people who churn of 1 here, and who don't churn. What we're looking for here is a difference in these statistics, but I gotta say, looking at this big table of numbers is really difficult for me to pull anything useful out. I could look, for example, at the customer service calls down the very bottom here and see that for the people who didn't churn, they had an average of 1.4 calls to customer service in the month. For the people who did churn, they had an average of 2.2, so maybe that's something that is going to be useful. But trying to go through that and do it for all of these numbers is going to make my head hurt. So this is where the graphs become helpful. You can just scroll through these graphs and see where does it look like we've got a very different distribution. And so for account length, it doesn't look any different to me. And we can confirm that by having looked down at the means. The mean length of account service for the people who don't leave was 101 months. For the people who do leave, it's 103 months. That's very, very similar. It's unlikely that account length is going to be something that's useful in predicting whether people churn. So let's scroll through these. Well, day minutes looks like maybe that's got a higher mean for the people who are churning. As we look through these, maybe we'll pick out a couple more. Day charge, similarly. Evening minutes, maybe. Evening number of calls doesn't look interesting. Evening charge, maybe. There's a difference. Night minutes looks very similar. Doesn't look like the night variables are going to be that useful. How about international? We did see there was something with an international plan, but doesn't look like there's a big difference here in terms of these values. Total minutes. Yeah, looks like total minutes is higher for the people who are churning. Total calls, no different. Total charge, yeah, now we've got a little bit of a difference here. This distribution looks a little higher than this distribution. And then finally, customer service calls. Yeah, this one looks like there is a big difference here. That the overall distribution is higher for the people who are churning, and that mean is higher for the people who are churning. So this now is suggesting a couple of variables: customer service calls, total charge, and do we see anything else up the top? Maybe the total minutes, something like that, as variables that might be useful in predicting whether or not somebody is going to leave our service.